Discover how a single mom's unexpected kindness transformed a billionaire CEO's locked-out crisis. Emily adjusted the flimsy table in the cramped community library as she readied for another Saturday morning of teaching kids to read. Even amidst pressing deadlines at her waitressing job and tutoring, those hours meant the world to her. But at that moment, as the noise of the bustling city filtered through worn windows, she stepped outside for fresh air and spotted him. Jack, a sharply dressed man exuding an aura of distress in front of his luxury office building. He looked like he had leapt straight off a glossy billboard, yet his furrowed brow and frantic tapping on his phone revealed a different reality. He was locked out, panic etched on his face. It struck her, the compassion. She closed the space between them and decided to offer her assistance. "Need help?" she asked, her voice laced with sincerity. Jack turned, initially stunned, as if kindness was an alien concept. Her genuine intent reminded him of the lost simplicity he desperately missed. He opened up about the corporate grind, using words that felt grand against her reality, but also exposed his own fear of being disconnected from life. Emily nodded, relaying her own struggles, sharing snippets of exhaustion, chaotic schedules, and the determination to give her kids a chance she wished she had. They settled onto the cold concrete steps, the tension palpable as they began to uncover layers of their lives. Jack's high-stakes battles against ruthless competitors clashed with Emily's day-to-day hustle against life's harsh edges. He longed for authenticity while she craved understanding. Their worlds were boxes built of inconceivable walls. His glittered with monetary success while hers were stained by survival. Before the conversation could deepen, Jack's phone buzzed violently, cutting through the fragile intimacy they had begun to forge. A corporate scandal warning, his gut twisted. The very infrastructure he'd toiled to create threatened to crumble, and within seconds, threads of fear and uncertainty wove themselves tightly around his throat. How could he juggle this unexpected crisis with the raw humanity sparking between them? With every passing moment, the reality of switching gears weighed heavier. Did he care about reputation more than connection? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jack stood, glancing nervously at his phone that buzzed again, each vibration extracting something deeper from him. Should he detonate the foundation of trust he had just begun to build over a potential scandal? The weight of broken promises and shattered intentions hovered above him, squeezing his chest tight. Should he chase the approval of the board and risk losing sight of what truly mattered, or respond to the flicker of humanity igniting that morning? Caught between the world of high finance and this unexpected connection with Emily, he wrestled with despair, determination battling against instinct. The city thrived around them, but every tick of the clock felt like a verdict on his future. The path was slipping into a maze, one that twisted with moral dilemmas he never anticipated. Would he allow this moment to slip away, or would he choose to redefine success, even if it came at a steep cost? As the world pulsed around him, uncertainty gripped his heart, leaving him standing at the crossroads of ambition and integrity, waiting for clarity that seemed barely within his grasp. Jack inhaled sharply, the fresh air contrasting sharply with the suffocating anxiety coiling in his chest. Instinctively, he stepped back from Emily, a battleground poised between vulnerability and professional obligation. As he walked away from the steps, his mind raced, each thought buzzing like the frantic notifications illuminating his screen. Behind the polished facade, his heart sank. Could he really abandon this moment of genuine connection? Emily watched him retreat, an invisible barrier rising between them. She felt his urgency, the weight of corporate turmoil stealing her hope for a deeper engagement. He quickly absorbed himself in his phone, seemingly dismissing the warmth of their shared conversation. For Emily, it confirmed a familiar truth, that the world was often indifferent to the struggles of those who hustled for something more meaningful. Yet, inspiration struck. She pivoted, reaching out tentatively. You know, sometimes you have to step away from what you've built to really see what's important. Her words hung in the air, a fragile lifeline tossed between two people from divergent worlds. Jack glanced back, momentarily trapped in the web of her insight. There was a raw authenticity in her voice, much unlike the rehearsed scripts and strategic dialogue that filled his daily life. It prompted a series of reflections he hadn't permitted himself in far too long. Did the success he built at the cost of his soul truly offer fulfillment? I can't just walk away, he finally replied, his voice strained. My entire career is at stake. There's so much pressure. Pressure? She interrupted, her tone steady but her heart racing. Pressure to do what? Keep climbing a mountain that at the top you'll realize isn't even your own? Silence enveloped them, and Jack studied her, taking in the light dusting of exhaustion beneath her resolute demeanor. He saw a single mother at her limit, yet her courage juxtaposed beautifully with his inner turmoil. For the first time, the glass walls of his corporate reality felt constricting, a cage he had unknowingly constructed. I don't think I've ever considered what I truly want, Jack confessed, a tentative crack appearing in his polished persona. I've chased accolades like they were the answer, and maybe I've lost some part of myself in the process. Emily took a slow breath, recognizing the impact of her words. What if you found a way to align your success with who you actually are, instead of who you think you should be? Her question lingered, prompting an internal dialogue that felt nearly revolutionary. This moment of vulnerability challenged him to reconsider the very fabric of his identity. Was he merely a cog in the corporate machine, or could he be something more? He nodded slowly, mulling over her proposition. In her presence, he sensed the stirrings of an idea, an intangible curiosity buzzing within him, but also the unmistakable fear that accompanies any significant change. The stakes were high, leaving him torn between the comfort of what he knew and the disquieting allure of a life more fulfilling. Sensing his hesitation, Emily's voice softened. Change is uncomfortable, but sometimes it's the only way forward. You don't have to face this alone. Those last words ignited a flicker of courage in Jack. Maybe, just maybe, this encounter was part of a larger journey, one that involved rekindling passion for life. Had he spent too long navigating his existence with blinders on, ignoring the deeper questions nagging at his heart? As he stood there, caught in a tumult of thoughts, the decision weighed heavier than the corporate scandal looming in the back of his mind. This moment, perhaps even this person, may forge a new path, one of authenticity he dared to explore. With a newfound resolve, Jack turned back to Emily, his gaze steady. "Can we explore this together?" he asked, a subtle but profound shift in his demeanor evident. "I might just need a little guidance." Her eyes sparkled with hope, and a sense of mutual understanding that stirred something profound within her as well. Yet even as they embarked on this journey together, Jack realized the old world was not ready to relinquish its hold on him. The messages in his pocket persisted, reminding him of the chaos awaiting his return. What would happen when the realities of his corporate life collided with this budding desire for authenticity? The weight began to settle back in his chest. His moment of clarity also brought the specter of conflict. The time had come to face the music. Caught between the promise of newfound authenticity and the relentless grip of his corporate obligations, Jack found himself at a crossroads. The gentle breeze rustled leaves above him, echoing the tumult of his thoughts. Emily stood before him, a mix of determination and uncertainty painted across her features. For the first time in years, Jack felt a flicker of hope. The possibility that change could indeed spark from an unexpected encounter. "Let's meet tomorrow," he suggested, his voice carrying more conviction than he felt. "We can talk about a plan or whatever this is. I need to define what I want, and I want your thoughts on that." Emily nodded, her smile infectious. Despite the weight of his impending responsibilities, for an instant the horizon appeared wider, filled with potential. However, as he turned to leave, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket, a stark reminder of the corporate storm brewing. Peering at the screen revealed a barrage of emails and messages, all connected to the chaotic fallout he'd temporarily put aside. His heart raced, the familiar pressure returning. The thought of failure loomed, the kind that could end his career or sabotage the fragile clarity he was beginning to embrace. He caught himself wondering if someone like Emily could ever understand the magnitude of the stakes, hour by hour, decision by decision. At work the following day, Jack plunged back into the whirlpool of data, forecasts, and power struggles. Sitting in a meeting room surrounded by executives, he noticed a growing disconnection between himself and the conversation spiraling around him. Their talk of profits felt hollow. Their laughter over successes rang empty. He felt like an interloper in his own life. A nagging doubt crept in. Was he truly doing this for himself, or was he enslaved by the expectations of others? Suddenly, his mind flashed to Emily's question. What was his real mountain to climb? As the meeting dragged on, he reflected on how little he'd allowed himself to genuinely engage. If their commentary revolved around image rather than substance, why was he playing their game? "Jack, you're quiet today," Cheryl, a high-ranking executive, snapped, breaking through his reverie. "Anything to contribute? We're about to finalize the Q3 targets." Beneath the scrutiny of their eyes, he felt the familiar pressure mount. They expected him to deliver a polished response, a scripted version of himself. But what if he pivoted instead? Heart pounding, Jack cleared his throat. "I think we need to reconsider our approach to target setting. Instead of just numbers, what if we incorporated alignment with our core values? Maybe we should evaluate how our project impacts the community." Cheryl's expression flickered with surprise. As murmurs rippled through the board members, Jack felt the pulse of sincerity course through him, something he hadn't fully accessed in ages. Emily's influence lingered, pushing him to confront the status quo. The room fell silent, all eyes darting in his direction. Jack acknowledged the trepidation swelling in his chest, but leaned into it. "We're chasing profit, but at what cost? The world is changing around us. If we fail to adapt and prioritize our integrity, we won't just lose customers, we may lose our relevance." He finished, catching his breath, noting the stony expressions juxtaposed with budding intrigue. Would this honesty dismantle or solidify his position? Clarity and courage teetered against a cliff edge, an uncertain precipice that terrified him. As the meeting ended, the tension still lingered in the air, a harbinger of the unknown repercussions. At that moment, Jack knew he had crossed an invisible threshold. He was taking potential steps towards authenticity, however shaky. Later, as he left the office surrounded by the dense hum of phones buzzing and screens flashing, he felt the urgency of his journey ahead sharpen. Emily had opened the door to a path he had long ignored, but now he had to face the reality of what lay beyond it. As he reached for his phone to text her about their planned meeting, another notification blinked ominously, an urgent message from corporate headquarters. He halted, the weight of his reality crashing back down, a stark contrast to the budding potential he felt only hours earlier. Could he truly navigate this emerging authenticity against a backdrop of overwhelming demands? With uncertainty clutching at the edges of his resolve, Jack knew one thing for sure. He couldn't unsee the cracks in the wall anymore. The time had come not just to face the music, but to confront the architect of his discontent. How would he handle what awaited him on the other side of this growing revelation? Jack felt the chill of anxiety wash over him as he opened the urgent message. Scanning the contents, it outlined a critical oversight in a recent project, a glaring mistake that could lead to significant financial repercussions. The familiar knot twisted in his stomach. This wasn't just a minor hiccup. It was the kind of failure that could erode trust in his leadership. Rubbing the back of his neck, he fought the urge to retreat into his shell. The corporate world thrived on punishing failures, and here he was, teetering on the precipice of honesty, but clearly submerging in the depths of chaos. He couldn't ignore the urgency of the situation, yet his heart just wasn't in it anymore. In that moment, Jack had to make a choice. The old Jack would have buried himself in spreadsheets and damage control, throwing himself into overdrive mode just to salvage his reputation. But even as he noticed the familiar impulses to be reactive, a new realization seeped in, ignited by the memory of his recent conversation with Emily. What if he stepped back? What if he analyzed the situation through the lens of authenticity, rather than fear? He grabbed a pen and began jotting down his thoughts, not on the numbers, but on the principles behind the project. He wanted to know what led to the oversight and how it affected the team's morale, customer trust, and the company's mission. Hours passed as he transformed the crisis in his mind from an insurmountable challenge into an opportunity for honest discussion. Using the strengths built through vulnerability, he crafted an email to the stakeholders detailing the error and presenting a strategy to recover, emphasizing transparency and accountability. Instead of attempting to spin the narrative, he would own up to the mistake and frame it within a context that pushed for growth and collaboration rather than fear and blame. Stepping away from his desk, Jack reflected on the shift occurring within his mindset. Each choice to embrace authenticity felt like an act of defiance against the rigid corporate structure that had long controlled his life. Yet it also felt liberating. He realized that by confronting the realities head-on, he was inviting his team into a deeper, more meaningful conversation about their values and purpose, a reclamation of their collective humanity amidst profit-driven motives. As he prepared for the meeting he had anticipated as a crisis management session, Jack felt an unexpected calm wash over him. The nerves that once threatened to consume him turned into a steady determination. What could they build together if they approached the situation not as individuals hiding behind facades, but as a cohesive unit aspiring for genuine progress? Entering the room, Jack could feel the buzz in the air, a mix of anxiety and anticipation from his colleagues as they gathered around the conference table. He caught Cheryl's eye, and for a fleeting moment, he could see her expectations laid bare. Would he rise to meet the crisis in the standard way, or would he venture into uncharted territory? As Jack took a deep breath, readying himself to share his plan, he realized that this moment was no longer just about rectifying a mistake. It was about redefining his leadership and embracing his vision for fostering authenticity among his entire team. This was the step he needed to take to navigate through the murky waters of corporate life. But as he began to speak, another notification blinked on his phone, an old connection from his past, someone who had been waiting for an opportunity to re-engage. The name sent a wave of uncertainty rippling through him. Would this new development distract him from the commitment he had just started to embrace, or would it challenge him to grow even further? Jack paused, the curious prospect swirling in his mind. A decision loomed ahead, whether to pursue a fleeting relationship with familiar echoes of his past, or to fully dive into this transformative journey that awaited him. The lines between old patterns and new paths blurred, leaving a profound question lingering. Was he truly ready to surrender the safety of the past for the uncertain yet exhilarating potential of a new future? Jack's gaze drifted back to his phone as he prepared to speak. The notification sat there like a weight, pulling at his focus. He was standing on the cusp of something significant, a chance to reshape his relationship with his team, to instill raw honesty in a place often consumed by facades. But the name flashing on the screen stirred up a past he thought he had set aside. With every second ticking away, the external pressure of the room caused the usual tense vibe to morph into something sharper, more pressing. He felt the room coiling around him, every expectation mounting as his heart raced. He couldn't allow a distraction now, nor let any unresolved issues from his past cloud the direction of his newfound authenticity. Yet, as disparate memories of that connection surged, Jack recognized a flicker of intrigue, one that could either render him more resilient or distract him from what truly mattered. Steeling himself, he mentally pushed the nagging thoughts aside for later contemplation. "I owe them nothing less than honesty," he murmured to himself under his breath. Once he began to speak, the words came out slowly at first, but the cadence shifted into a rhythm that felt increasingly natural. "Thank you all for coming today. I want to address a mistake we recently encountered, a critical oversight in our latest project." There were murmurs and uncertain glances exchanged around the table, but Jack pressed on, each word building momentum. "I have always believed in ownership and accountability, and now more than ever, I realize those principles must not just be talked about, they need to be lived. I want to share what led to this mistake so we can collectively learn and grow." His audience leaned in, curiosity piquing as Jack articulated the details. Misdirection, pressure to perform, and lack of communication formed a tapestry of missteps that resonated with his team. Jack watched as the initial anxiety in their faces began to shift, reflecting interest instead of fear. "We aren't just a group of individuals working for a paycheck. We're a team committed to a shared mission," Jack continued, confidence growing as he drew upon the lessons learned. "Let's not ethnograph pain into despair, but rather see it as an opportunity to foster dialogue, innovate, and drive change. This mistake is part of our journey, not the end of it." As he laid out his recovery strategy, he could sense a profound change occurring. People began to nod, eyes glistening with an emerging camaraderie that hadn't been part of their interactions previously. He felt a connection with them that he hadn't known he was deprived of, one that could turn the chaos of corporate existence into shared struggles and triumphs. With each case study he unfurled, he invited his colleagues to join in the solution-building process. Hands raised excitedly, providing insights and reflecting the unfiltered honesty he had dared to embrace moments earlier. Jack marveled at how worthwhile vulnerability could yield dividends far beyond what spreadsheets ever could. This meeting was more than just addressing issues. It transformed into a collective effort toward innovation spurred by honesty. As the meeting came to a close, Jack couldn't shake the lingering feeling that something greater was unfolding. Even as he returned to his desk, he couldn't ignore the faint pulse of uncertainty about the notification flashing on his screen. A decision loomed larger now, both an opportunity for growth and a potential distraction from his ongoing transformation. What once seemed like a simple connection now carried the weight of a personal dilemma. He needed resolve. Would he pursue this past tether, which offered a semblance of comfort, or would he forge ahead into the unknown of his commitment to authenticity? As he wrestled with this question, the possibilities coiled around him like a thick fog, and he understood intimately that the path ahead would demand more than he had thought possible. His phone buzzed again, the uncertainty mixing with resolve. The moment approached when he would have to reconcile these competing narratives within him, embarking on an exploration of choice. Would this old connection pull him back to who he was, or push him further toward who he was becoming? What he didn't know was that the answer would reveal a side of himself that had long remained dormant, igniting a transformation he never anticipated. And as he reached for his phone, an unexpected message blinked forth, prompting a question he never saw coming. Was he truly ready for what lay ahead? Jack stared at the screen, the notification pulsating like a heartbeat. He felt a chill run down his spine as anticipation pulled him between regret and excitement. The name embodied both history and the potential for change, the kind that could either unravel or catalyze his journey at work. With a determined breath, he silenced the phone and refocused his thoughts. The vibrant atmosphere from the meeting still lingered. Accountability had sparked collaboration among his team. That flicker of connection now filled the voids that had kept him isolated, a revelation he had never fully grasped until today. He understood that tenderness and vulnerability might generate discomfort, but they also wielded the power to ignite transformation. As he glanced around his office, a new sense of purpose settled in. The decor was still the same, yet he could finally envision it filled with the energy of honest discussions, ideas unfurling like petals in spring. Yet doubt loomed like an invisible cloud. Would this newfound honesty stand firm against the temptation to retreat into old patterns? In the days that followed, Jack dedicated himself to fostering the newly minted camaraderie. Conversations turned deeper during meetings. Team members began to share their struggles, and solutions emerged not just from him, but collaboratively. Each interaction cemented his belief that fostering an environment of vulnerability and accountability was more than a strategy. It was vital. But still, the notification weighed on his mind. Each time he reached for his phone, he hesitated, wrestling with what lay unsaid. Today, that temptation returned, manifesting as the phone lit up with another alert. Curiosity piqued, he tapped the screen, an old colleague requesting to meet. His stomach twisted. What if this meeting didn't just complicate his professional development, but also stirred unresolved layers of his past? Yet, a competing voice rallied within him. Was this not the opportunity to face what he had so relentlessly pushed aside? The thought resonated profoundly. This could be his chance to explore not only the depths of an old connection, but also how each piece fit into the revolution of his identity. He realized that personal growth often demanded more than choices. It required confrontations. Jack stood at a crossroads, the pull of inauthenticity urging retreat, and the lure of honesty beckoning him forward. Gathering his courage, he decided he would accept the meeting. He acknowledged that the whir of old emotions could serve not just as a distraction but as a lens to examine his evolving self. Could embracing this encounter fortify his path? Removing those layers of past hurt might just unlock greater strength. As he prepared himself for the conversation, balancing his emotions with tactical planning, an undeniable knot of anxiety tangled with excitement swirled inside. This would not simply validate or invalidate his progress. It stood to challenge his very essence. With each decision he made, he was sketching the blueprint of who he sought to be amidst the operational demands of his role. Reaching for his phone again, he made sure to confirm the meeting. But just as he did, another message flashed on the screen. This one was more disconcerting, a forwarded note from upstairs about a planned reevaluation of team structures. Jack's heart raced. Instability could very well threaten the fragile connections he had begun to build. The question loomed larger now. How could he safeguard his team's newfound honesty in an unpredictable corporate landscape? This was a battle for both personal clarity and professional integrity, and he would soon have to rally himself and his team against looming challenges. What he didn't anticipate was that this confrontation would force him to confront not merely external pressures but also the walls he had erected within himself. The narrative was shifting, the stakes culminating. As he braced for what would come next, an awakening was on the horizon, one that could ultimately define who he was becoming. The hours before the meeting dragged on like molasses, the weight of anticipation pressing down on Jack's chest. It was no ordinary meeting. It promised to bridge a gap he had spent years constructing with bricks of doubt and fear. The office buzz faded into white noise as the date approached, and each tick of the clock seemed to echo the unresolved echoes of his past. He considered the implications of revisiting memories. They lingered like ghosts, whispering fears of inadequacy and failure. Yet this was a pivotal moment, and he had to engage with it fully, without the veils he had previously worn. As he prepared, he began to unravel the layers he had blanketed over his vulnerabilities, reflecting on the lessons buried beneath the surface. That evening, in a coffee shop that mirrored his blend of anxiety and hope, Jack found himself fidgeting with the rim of his cup. The daylight outside was dimming, casting shadows that danced across the table. He took a deep breath, centering himself not on what he feared, but on who he was striving to become. This meeting wasn't solely about reconnecting with old colleagues. It signified a confrontation with his own narrative. As he glanced around the room, he studied the faces of those engaged in conversation. Laughter, comfort, authenticity. There lay a stark contrast to how he had conducted himself for years, perpetually guarded and reserved. Could this reunion challenge that long-held stance? When his former colleague entered, Jack felt an immediate jolt, the past swirling in with the present. They exchanged pleasantries infused with nostalgia, the air thick with an unspoken tension. He sensed the unresolved issues hovering between them like a thick fog, projects left unfinished, misunderstandings unprocessed. Would they address the elephant in the room, or would Jack slip back into old habits of glossing over reality? They ordered their drinks and settled into a booth, the intimacy of the setting prompting vulnerability. As the conversation flowed, moments of awkwardness were punctuated by laughter. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the real discussion lay just beneath the surface. It took courage, but the smoldering embers of honesty ignited in him, and he finally asked, "What happened to us back then?" In an instant he was swept back to a time when dreams had felt tangible, ambitious, even reckless. His colleague's eyes clouded with memory as she began to open up about her own struggles, doubts, fears, and the heavy burden of expectations. With every shared disclosure, Jack felt walls start to crumble, both hers and his, clear evidence that vulnerability could create genuine connection. Yet as they delved deeper into their past, the looming corporate reevaluation weighed heavily on his mind. It resurfaced the urgency of protecting the relationships he had begun to foster within his team. This was not merely personal growth. The stakes were now intertwined with professional integrity. Jack listened intently, absorbing lessons from his past that had relevance in his present. As the conversation reached a crescendo, he felt a rush of clarity. It was no longer just about facing unresolved connections. It was a broader call to balance honesty with strategy moving forward. Before they parted ways, she leaned in, her voice soft but clear. "Remember, growth happens in uncertainty. Embrace it." The words hung between them, validating his internal journey. Jack left the coffee shop with a reinvigorated spirit, his mind a flurry of thoughts. Could he leverage the lessons learned from this encounter to protect the integrity of his team amid corporate chaos? Accepting that discomfort was a precursor to growth. He understood he needed to communicate with his team openly, sparking a movement that would shield their dynamic from external threats. As he reached his car, his phone vibrated with another message, this time from an executive above him. A strategy meeting was scheduled for the following day to discuss restructuring plans and their impact on the team. Would this be yet another upheaval, or a chance to advocate for the unity he had fostered? His heart raced as he gripped the steering wheel, the weight of his responsibilities both exhilarating and daunting. The moment had arrived to face not only the unpredictable corporate landscape ahead, but also the truths in the personal journeys of those around him. Jack's pulse quickened. The challenges were mounting, and one thought stood out vividly. Could he transform this turbulence into a catalyst for the lasting change he envisioned? The forthcoming moment would not merely define his role within the company, but also sculpt the leader he was learning to become. Little did he know, the real confrontation awaited him, one that would test everything he had come to understand about growth, connection, and accountability. The next morning dawned early, with the familiar hum of city life waking around him. Jack brewed a fresh pot of coffee, the aroma rich and grounding. He needed that grounding. The meeting loomed ahead like a storm cloud gathering strength. He fleetingly gazed at his reflection in the window, uncertainty flickering in his own eyes. The weight of leadership demanded more than surface-level intellect. It required authenticity, a skill he was still mastering. His mind raced, contemplating strategies that would convey strength without alienating those below him. Jack envisioned his team, each member woven intricately into a fabric of relationships, talents, and aspirations. He needed them to trust him. This meeting wasn't a mere presentation. It was a critical moment to solidify their collective resolve against impending changes. As he arrived at the office, the chatter of his team offered a backdrop of normalcy. Yet Jack could feel a shift in energy, a palpable anxiety mulling beneath the surface. He gathered them in the conference room, his heart hammering as he addressed their faces, some full of uncertainty, others yearning for reassurance. He started with acknowledgement of their hard work, emphasizing the importance of transparency, an echo of what his colleague had shared the previous night. "I know tough decisions are coming," he stated with conviction, his voice firm yet inviting. "But we need to talk about it. I want us to strategize together on how we navigate through any changes." The response was immediate. A few faces softened, while others remained etched in concern, but he sensed a shift. There was power in his openness. Jack could feel the glimmer of potential. He was bringing them into the fold, moving from solitary decision-making to collaborative discourse. Yet with each step forward, doubts crept in. Would they follow his lead, or would they mirror his own insecurities? Questions erupted from his team, concerns of job security and changes in their roles. Each query only illuminated his need to embody the very spirit he was trying to promote, courage in the face of uncertainty. "We are here to support each other either way," he asserted, "and that won't change." The gravity of his own words sank in, and Jack knew he needed to commit beyond rhetoric. As they began to brainstorm, paring down fears and ideas into actionable responses, he found himself struck by a hidden capability within his team: resilience. They were innovative and resourceful, and as they shared their thoughts, Jack felt an emerging excitement replace his earlier anxiety. The conversation flowed, bringing forth creative solutions that spun from vulnerability, much like the discussion he had shared with his colleague just the night before. Yet beneath that bubbling camaraderie, a critical voice loomed in his mind. What truly lay at stake? Would they remain cohesive amidst the corporate shakeup? Uncertainty intertwined with hope. The meeting briefly offered a refuge, yet signaled an incoming storm. This moment could very well define his leadership trajectory, paving the path for unexpected alliances or discord. Amidst the discussion, the clock in the room ticked loudly, invading his thoughts. A notification chimed on his phone, a message outlining the restructuring proposals that would soon affect his team directly. The content felt heavy, almost suffocating against the backdrop of their newly forged trust. He glanced at the screen, heartbeat pulsing erratically. There it was, the reckoning he had feared, a decision looming larger than he imagined. Jack's resolve solidified. He would need to confront the executives and advocate fiercely for the very people who had stepped into the light with him today. The initial step into vulnerability had led him to this point, and every lesson he had absorbed was leading him toward this pivotal confrontation. He stood taller, resolve coursing through him. "We're in this together," Jack affirmed, eyes unwavering as he looked around the room. "I will fight for our vision. Together, we'll formulate a response that signifies our unity." As he spoke, a profound shift occurred within him, a recognition that advocacy was not just an external endeavor but an internal commitment to lead by example. The air charged with intention, and he felt a surge of empowerment. But then, a nagging feeling tugged at him. What might happen beyond this moment? The journey ahead was fraught with challenges that would test his newly found strength and commitment. The real threats and triumphs awaited him in the office of executives, and this time he wouldn't stand alone. As Jack prepared to delve deeper into the corporate restructuring that could potentially upend everything he had fought to create, he felt a lingering question emerge. Would he remain the architect of unity, or could the very tide he wished to ride drown those connections he had just begun to solidify? As Jack stepped into the executive office, the atmosphere was starkly different from the collaborative haven he had just created with his team. The walls, adorned with awards and accolades, felt like a trap rather than a testament to success. He could almost feel the weight of the titles pressing down on him, each one a reminder of the expectations stacked against him. The meeting was scheduled for 10 minutes, an ample duration in the world of corporate discussions, but an eternity in the realm of life-altering decisions. Sitting around the polished table was his team's greatest challenge. The executive board, expressions ripe with authority and skepticism. Jack swallowed hard. He had forged tentative trust with his team, yet here, he could feel those very connections put to the test. The moment he stepped in, he sensed their nervous energy was a reflection of his own. The CEO, a steely-eyed woman with a reputation for being ruthless, leaned forward, fingers steepled beneath her chin. "We appreciate your input, Jack, but we need results. What you propose must align seamlessly with the company's bottom line." Words danced in his mind as he gathered his thoughts. Jack had anticipated their focus on finances, but how could he convey his team's inherent value beyond the numbers? His initial impulse was to recapitulate his previous successes, but he hesitated. This was a moment for authenticity, not just numbers that could be twisted and churned. "I understand," he replied, steadying his gaze across the table. "But I believe in prioritizing our people. The strength of this company lies not just in its financial metrics but in the talent, creativity, and resilience of the individuals we employ." A few brows furrowed, doubt crossing their faces. Jack pushed forward, feeling a flicker of courage ignite within him. "I've worked closely with my team over this past week to navigate the restructuring challenges head-on. Together, we've developed innovative solutions that not only ensure we maintain productivity but also encourage employee loyalty during this transition. They deserve our support, and I'll present our strategy rooted in collaboration, not isolation." The air thickened with tension. He could see the CEO weighing his audacity against her own judgment. A silence hung in the room, stretching like a taut wire. Jack's heart raced, adrenaline surging as he readied himself to combat the inevitable skepticism with a proposal that reflected unity, his true belief. Yet, as he unfolded their strategy, numbering points for clarity, he sensed a spotlight on his own vulnerability. He aimed for transparency but feared exposing the cracks of uncertainty seen by both his team and the executives. Then, with an unexpected twist, he committed to sharing more than just strategy. He dared to reveal the fears his team had faced during the restructuring discussions. It's easy to overlook the human element when policies and budgets overshadow personnel, Jack articulated, his voice steady but filled with conviction. Each decision impacts lives. I trust that if we center our approach on our people, the performance followed will speak volumes. The potential is immeasurable when empowered teams are backed by mindful leadership. At that moment, a seed of discomfort planted itself deep in Jack's mind. Would they perceive his honesty as strength or weakness? How would they respond to his call for empathy? In this delicate balance between vulnerability and power, he was risking not only his own standing but also the well-being of the team he had just begun to unify. As murmurs fluttered like restless wings around the table, the CEO raised an eyebrow, intrigued but unconvinced. Convincing a team to accept change is one thing, keeping them motivated through potential layoffs is another. The challenge hung heavy in the room, suffocating his optimistic narrative. Jack realized one truth became abundantly clear. He required more than just proposals. He needed to illuminate the essence of leadership that transcended these daunting conversations. His gaze shifted around the table. It was time to harness not just strategic insight, but the shared humanity that threaded through their professional concerns. Jack felt the tension melt into a drive to dissect the complex dynamics before him. Perhaps the tide could shift in favor of his team, but he also needed to ignite that drive within himself. With the clock advancing and the tension thickening, Jack prepared for the question he sensed would follow, a test of his resolve. Are you willing to walk away from this role for your team if it comes to that? As she posed the question, Jack's mind intruded with visions of what that answer could mean. Either choice would carve the character he wished to embody. Feeling the weight of the moment, he inhaled deeply. What would he uncover about his own resolve by confronting the ultimate sacrifice? And amid an impending decision, Jack felt the ground shifting beneath him, unveiling possibilities he hadn't dared to imagine. What would he be willing to risk to signal his commitment to fostering a culture of loyalty and empowerment? Jack stood at the crossroads of his career, the atmosphere electrified with tension, as he contemplated the magnitude of the question posed by the CEO. Are you willing to walk away from this role for your team if it comes to that? Her icy tone cut through the whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind. His heart, however, was steadying. He had ventured too far into the realm of authenticity to back down now. In that moment of reckoning, Jack found clarity. It was not just about protecting himself or securing his position. It was about embodying the leadership he aspired to be. He had spent years navigating a corporate landscape built on fear, and now he faced the opportunity to forge a different path. He took a deep breath, the gravity of the moment grounding him. Yes, he finally said, voice unwavering. I am willing to walk away if it means protecting the integrity and well-being of my team. We need to foster an environment where people feel valued and empowered beyond the numbers we report. The room fell silent. Jack's admission hung in the air, an invisible line drawn between his former self, which had thrived on accolades and personal gain, and the leader he had become since his encounter with Emily. The change within him was undeniable. Each choice he had made since they first met had led him here, standing firm on his principles. As the executives absorbed his words, Jack sensed a shift. The initial skepticism receded, replaced by something akin to respect. He could see intrigue flicker in their eyes as they contemplated the ramifications of his commitment. Behind his steadfast stance lay a profound understanding. The business world could no longer be governed solely by profits. It needed to resonate with humanity. The CEO leaned back, folding her arms. Your integrity is commendable, Jack. But we operate in a results-driven environment. You will need to articulate how this approach translates into actionable outcomes. In response, Jack felt a surge of determination. He began to outline the measures drafted with his team, presenting a cohesive plan that capitalized on their strengths while addressing the restructuring challenges. Everything he'd developed stemmed from collaborative discussions where he had actively listened and incorporated the experiences of his team. He detailed how prioritizing employee welfare would manifest in increased productivity and reduced turnover, measurable outcomes that could enhance the company's reputation. As he spoke, Jack transformed before their eyes. He embodied a leader grounded in authenticity, empowered by his journey. The more he articulated his vision, the more solidified it became. He could hear the conviction in his own voice, carrying with it not just a strategy for the present but a blueprint for a sustainable future. One of the executives finally broke the silence. "This commitment is admirable, Jack, but there are risks involved. We operate under shareholders' expectations. If we turn a blind eye to bottom lines, the repercussions could fall back on you. Can you truly safeguard your team's trust while maintaining a balance with corporate demands?" Jack nodded. "Every risk yields an opportunity for growth. If we fail to adapt to a changing business environment while building a culture rooted in trust and transparency, we'll not only lose our competitive edge, we'll lose our most valuable asset, our people. They deserve leaders who prioritize their well-being, just as much as we prioritize performance targets. The choice between compassion and results is a false dichotomy. They're interconnected." Murmurs of agreement began to ripple through the room. There was something palpable in the air now, a shared recognition of the potential to pivot from survival mode into thriving. Jack could feel it. His team was no longer just a collection of individuals, but a cohesive force prepared to champion their shared mission. By anchoring in his authenticity and standing firm in his values, Jack had not only transformed himself, but was igniting a shift within the corporate culture. He was no longer merely holding his ground. He was building a bridge between compassion and professionalism that resonated with everyone present. As the meeting concluded, Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him. The executives were intrigued, inspired even. They would deliberate further, but Jack had proven that vulnerability could coexist with accountability, that he was no longer just a pawn in the corporate chess game, but a strategic player with the ability to influence change. Exiting the boardroom, he carried a sense of accomplishment. He had conquered the internal and external challenges that had once limited him. With each hurdle he faced, he had proven to himself that embracing authenticity could ripple outwards, transforming not just oneself but the environment around them. The path ahead was still laden with uncertainty, yet Jack no longer feared it. Each new challenge would be an opportunity to further solidify his identity as a leader defined by integrity and compassion. He glanced at his phone and smiled. It was a message from Emily, checking in and offering her support. He felt a rush of gratitude, recognizing that their encounter had sparked a true evolution within him. He was a new man, one who was no longer afraid to explore the depths of his potential. Jack knew now more than ever that leadership was not a solo endeavor. It was about collaboration and shared growth. With the realization that he had indeed stepped into a realm of profound personal fulfillment, he understood one thing clearly. He had achieved a clarity that would guide him through every avenue of his life moving forward, and as he soared into this new chapter, he felt an urgency to share this perspective, to beckon others toward their own transformations. He needed them to act now. You need to subscribe instantly to embrace the journey ahead. Leave a like now to propel this story into the hearts of those who dare to dream. Comment your reflections. Let's build the dialogue together. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration in their own journeys. Don't wait even one more second. Show your support and join us as we embrace the power of personal growth.